Good afternoon. I just wanted to welcome everybody. My name is Akiva Feinstein, and I have the honor of serving in place of Rabbi Davidovich of the Heights Jewish Center. And we're here together, gathered as friends and family, and fans of a very special woman, of our most beloved Sylvia Fishman, nee Wymore. She was the beloved wife of the late Morris, devoted mother of Elton, the loving aunt of Eileen, Marilyn, and Ron, the great aunt of Peter, Shane, and Kate Wiseman, and the dear sister of Lawrence, Larry Wymore, as well as sister of the following deceased, her sisters Lucille and Gloria Crutch. It's nice when you learn about a woman who has a lot of spunk and energy. You know, sometimes the rabbi has to think, what can I say to make things a little bit interesting, spice things up a little bit. But thanks to the stories of her life, thanks to Marilyn and other people's input, there's plenty of spice and good ingredients, that will make us smile and laugh today. So our goal today is to give honor and reverence to Sylvia, but she would probably say, don't give me too much, Make sure you have a good time at the same time. Make sure you leave here with a smile and a good feeling. So we'll do our best to do that. So as a rabbi, I can't repeat all the things she said. Some of her jokes will have to be shared in different circles than these, but there's plenty of good things that we can share between all of us today. And also we have a very special treat for you at the very end, a special multimedia presentation of some of those spices that I was mentioning. We start out with a selection from the Psalms, the familiar Psalm 23, first read in Hebrew, then in English. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo iksar, Binais deshech yarbitzeni, al me menuchos yanachaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'maglei tzedek l'man shemo, gam ki elech begeit salmavis, lo yira ra ki arta imadi. Shiftecha o mishantecha, hema yanachamoni. Tairach lefanei shulchan, neged salrai, deshante v'shem en roshi, kosi revaya, ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni, kol yemei chayai, v'shaft v'beis Adonai, le'orech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in right paths for his name's sake. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff comfort me. Thou hast set before me a table in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. It's a Jewish custom to recite what is known as the Eshes Chayil, the accomplished woman from the Proverbs. And so, again, I have to say things a little bit different here, is that it's a very traditional reading. It focuses on a lot of domestic qualities. It focuses a lot on a person being a homemaker and taking care of all the mundane needs of the household. So, and it doesn't do a lot for, singing and humor and jokes and just charisma, but it is an alphabetical list of all the qualities. One need not have all of them. And she certainly had many special qualities. And just because she wasn't a person, who did knitting and sewing and those types of things on a regular basis, it doesn't mean that this song doesn't capture her special quality. Eshes chayil miyimsa v'rachok mipnei michra batach balev bala v'shalor lo yaksar gemalsu tov v'loira kol yamei chayecha darshet zemer ufishtim b'tas b'chapetz kapecha haisa kani yaisaicher mimerchak tavi lachma B'takam b'yahayt layla, b'titin teref leveisar achayk narosecha, zamama sadeh v'tikachechu, mi pri chapechanat akarem, chagra b'yayis masnecha, v'tameit zoyasecha, tama ki toiv sachra, lo yechbe b'layla, neira yadecha, shilcha v'kishor, v'kapecha samhu fale. Kappa parsa liani, ve'yadecha shilcha li'evyon l'sira me'bisa mishaleg, ki kol beisa levushanim, marvadi masasala, Sheish vargaman levusha, noida bisharim bala, bishifto ihim ziknei yaret sadi masasavatim kor, vechagner nasna knani, oiz vahadar levusha, betischak leyoim acharoin, picha pascha v'hachma, v'soiras chesed al ishaina, Sophia halicha ispesa, v'lechem atzus lesochel, kamu v'necha v'yeshura, Vala vayehalla rabus panos hasochayil v'yatali sakulana sheker achein v'hevel ayoifi isha yiras adonai his halel tenula mipri yadecha v'halelucha b'sharim masecha. An accomplished woman who can find far beyond pearls is her value. Her husband's heart relies on her, and he shall lack no fortune. She repays his good, but never his harm, all the days of her life. She seeks out wool and linen, and her hands work willingly. She rises while it is nighttime, and gives food to her household. With strength she girds her loins, and invigorates her arms. Her hands she stretches out to the distaff, and her palms support the spindle. She spreads out her palm to the poor, and extends her hands to the destitute. She fears not snow, for her entire household, is clothed with scarlet wool. She makes a cloak to sell, and delivers a belt to the peddler. Strength and majesty are her raiment. She joyfully awaits the last day. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and a lesson of kindness is on her tongue. Her children arise and they praise her. Her husband, he lauds her. Many have amassed achievement, but you have surpassed them all. False is grace and vain is beauty. A God-fearing woman, she should be praised. Give her the fruits of her hands, and let her be praised in the gates by her very own deeds. So I was fortunate to have the reliance of a historian in the family. So Marilyn Bayer, as well as Elton, helped me out with quite a few details to be able to put, her very fascinating story together. So our Sylvia was born June 11th, 1916, in Cleveland, Ohio. Shortly after coming to this world, her family moved to Unionville, Ohio, which people might know of as more near Geneva, Ohio. And this was part of a program where people felt that Jewish people who lived in the city needed to move to the country, needed to become farmers. And I thought this was quite fascinating, and I actually looked it up a little bit. And I did find there's a website called clevelandjewishhistory.net, which is set up by a person named Arnold Berger. He's kind of a semi-famous person here. A lot of people know him. And he actually has a page called the Jewish Farmers of Geneva. And I guess Geneva was right next door to Unionville. And he has the most fascinating picture of all these Jewish people welcoming Rabbi Abba Hillel Silver, a very big rabbi at the time, welcoming him to their fields, and they're like a big tent and everything like that. So that was where she grew up much of her years, in this rural community outside of Geneva. And you can imagine, that it was a little bit dusty. It wasn't the big city. There were no big lights and billboards and whatnot. It was just a lot of grapes. I think over there they grew a lot of Concord grapes. And so her background is that her father was European born, and her mother was also, but she came to Cleveland really as a young girl. And so what happened was, when she was young, living in Cleveland, she really lived in a very close Jewish enclave, close Jewish neighborhood. So much so that she didn't even speak English with an American accent. She had a European accent, from the roots and from the neighborhood that she grew up in. So the family went to this farm, and I think that her siblings took to the work in the fields a little bit better, but she was not one to be picking grapes or whatnot in the field. And so she said to her father, very, very carefully, very clearly, she said, I'm not going to be doing this. I'm not going to be picking grapes. Maybe if you paid me, I might, but without that, definitely not. But nonetheless, she went through school, and she did well in Unionville. And very quickly, we could see the whole family setup, that her siblings were very quiet, and she was very not. She was the one who was very gregarious and outgoing and extremely social in her school. She was the one that did all the parts in the plays and made everyone laugh and made everyone really sparkle with her humor. So she came around in 1916, and then later on was her next oldest sister, Lucille, in 1919, Gloria in 1924, and then our youngster, Larry, who came around in 1926. But as the kids got along in age, it obviously became that it wasn't a future solution that the family would stay in Unionville. So they decided that they would leave and go to the famous Jewish neighborhood, to Glenville, the East 105th Street neighborhood of Cleveland. And the idea was that the girls would come and they would get married and they would all get set up with nice Jewish men and live, a normal life in the city. And that was what happened for her siblings, but that wasn't the plan with Sylvia. She wasn't so ready to settle down and assume that life. She was now a single girl, an older girl, living in a boarding house by herself. And her thing, the thing she enjoyed the most, was acting and entertainment and singing. And I guess at that time there were a lot of different nightclubs. People went to have a drink, smoky environment, some instruments, a band, and she was the singer. She was the one who got up on the stage and she sang, she sang these beautiful songs. And that it could be that her parents didn't always understand what she was doing, but her father happily brought her to the clubs and, made it possible, for her to have her dream fulfilled of being an entertainer. But then in 1947, after doing this for a little while, she decided that it was time to settle down. And she met a very lovely man named Sylvia Fishman. And, he was a very quiet person. In many ways, he was the opposite of her. He was a quiet, simple person. He had a warehouse job. He punched the time clock. He came home. In fact, he usually had two jobs. He usually had to work two jobs to make things happen for the two of them. But despite their differences, they were a perfect match. They were very close. They were very much the yin and the yang of the domestic situation. And not only were they complementary, but it was a situation where he very much looked up to her. That Maury looked up to her as a person who really knew what you needed to do, knew how to get through life. And many people thought that, hey, a husband like Maury, shouldn't he just feel jealous? Shouldn't he feel funny about a wife who's so outgoing and flamboyant and can just get up there and on the stage? And sometimes she was a little flirtatious and she was very popular with the gentlemen. And you would think that all these things would get to our Maury, but he seemed to just brush it off like no big deal. He was just very proud and very pleased of his beloved Sylvia, that she was just so successful and happy and well liked in life. And one of the best things that happened to the two of them was the arrival of their son Elton in 1948 or 1949. I don't know the exact year. 49, okay. So, and they had a lot of fun together. I'm sure that for Elton it was an amazing experience having this very cool mother, and this, very, very kind, simple father. And so once Elton grew up and got a little older, she was working. She worked at a place called the Hot Shop. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of that place. But, from what I understand, that once upon a time, Severance used to be a very cool place to be, cool place to hang out. And that if you wanted to meet the young people who would come and eat at a cafeteria, you'd work at the hot shop, where she enjoyed working. She was very much a person who was younger than her years, and it was a very natural connection working at this restaurant or cafeteria. And I understand later on she worked at American Greetings, or before, I don't know exactly that. And I know Marilyn was telling me that very much she identified with this working life. As much as she was a performer, she very much identified with the idea of being a worker. And that later on in her life, when she was a little confused about where she was, she would often picture that she has to get into the car and go off to work and do her job at American Greetings, among other places. But one of the most important things for her was to make sure that Elton was all set up. And I think one of the things that gave her the greatest pleasure was when she got Elton set up with his good home situation and his good friends and his good caregivers, and just for her to know that Elton was being well taken care of and was in a good place for him where to live. She didn't drive, so her husband took her wherever she needed to go, and they did a lot of local stops and a lot of things together locally in Cleveland, just having a good time doing the simple stuff. And from time to time, when they had the time, they would drive out to the country. She probably loved going to Geauga and the surrounding areas because it reminded her of the childhood that she had and remembered so fondly in Unionville. But sadly, Maury passed away in 1988, and that was definitely hard for her, losing her life partner so dear. But she moved on. She adjusted. She was a strong woman, and she moved to the Schnerman house, and she loved it there. And she immediately found a situation where she could perform and make people happy. So she was known for her singing and her joyful presentations. And not only would she sing at the Schnerman house, but she would go a little bit across the street to the Villa Serena. So Villa Serena is a Catholic facility, And she would go there, and most likely they would have her sing Italian, Irish, I don't know, tunes that are more familiar to the Catholic residents of the place. And she could totally pass herself off as like, oh, no problem. I grew up with these songs. That many people would ask her what part of Italy that she came from, because she was just so fun and so authentic and so real in the way that she was singing. And she was very much independent in this fashion until she was about 93 years old, just doing whatever she wanted to do, going place to place, day by day. And Sherman House was great because she made friends here that were her lifelong friends. I understand there's a person named Florence from Sherman House. I don't know if she's here. But, Florence, among many other people, were great friends that she made in those days that she kept her whole life. And her formula for getting to know people, was very simple. She just loved everybody, especially younger people. And rumor is that she even had a boyfriend. She even had a man who really looked up to her and she liked her, when she was just in her ripe age of the 80s. Her health started to fail, unfortunately. But what was funny about her was that she had the body that decided that it was a little tired, but her mind never tired. Her instinct never tired. So one of her biggest medical issues was that she would always want to get up and go places, but her body simply said, no, I can't do it. So she had, unfortunately, one fall after another, and she had a lot of different injuries. But after going through a lot of those things back and forth, a situation occurred for her that she was able to go back home. Until this time, she needed some help. She was in different facilities, but it worked out very nicely that she could go home again. And one of the key ingredients to her going home was a lady in the back row over there named Hattie Smith, who's smiling at us. And so she was her brilliant caregiver. And, you obviously knew how to take care of her so beautifully. And to know how to take care of a person who's so independent and, has her own strong will, but also needs a lot of love and attention, that's obviously a special gift. So our Hattie, had that gift and then some. So she moved to the Fountains of Kindred, and she lived there for a couple of years, and then she fell again, and then she lived in the Stratford Commons, and she fell again. But I believe that place was very special to her, all those places, For some people, I'm now in the Fountains, I can't do what I used to do. I'm in Stratford Commons because I need more help. But it sounds like for her, like it was just, new people to meet, a new fun group of faces to get to know again. And the proof of all this, besides just the rabbi saying nice things to make her story sound, a little sweeter, is what's right here, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. There's a video of her at her 100th birthday party. So this was just June from last year. And you'll see her in a group of people just dancing and singing and looking right into the camera and smiling and being very serenading and, very, very animated with this gentleman who is singing with her in this particular thing. And that was just her thing. Until the very end, she never lost this knack for having fun. She was always really funny, and she always had these jokes that were just like, even if they weren't so funny, but you just couldn't believe this 100-year-old lady would say that. Like, oh my goodness. So, and like I said, many of them are ones that I cannot repeat in this environment. But if you have enough of a connection with Marilyn and no one else is around, maybe she'll tell you some of them. And in particular, one of the people that she loved to imitate was Mae West. And so, I didn't grow up with Mae West. I'm a little too young. But from what I gather, she's a very, just very elegant, sultry, very beautiful woman, who was very popular with gentlemen in particular. And so she played that art, that piece very, very well, whatever she wanted to. But I think the main thing that makes her story possible was her independence and was her will. But as we know, this can't happen without helpers. We mentioned very much how much Hattie helped, but certainly she had a lot of help from her family. She obviously had her brother, Larry, who I can see just by looking at your face, how dear she was to you and how much you cared about her. And I know that you helped many ways. All the little things that came up over the years that she needed, that no one else could provide, that you were there for her when she really needed you. And her niece, Marilyn, you mentioned that you'd known her for all 66 years. And that it wasn't always so simple. It wasn't a matter of saying, okay, Sylvia, it's time to do X, Y, Z. For every X, Y, Z suggestion, she had a whole alphabet of responses to why she didn't need to do what you wanted her to do. But again, the main theme is she was a people person. She had her people around her wherever she went, and she always carried her love for Elton and her concern for him wherever she went. And she wasn't always able to care for him directly, but she was always able to carry him on her heart and to worry about him and to think about him. And it just made her feel so good that Hattie is carrying on the tradition of caring for her, and now has been a good friend and helpmate to Elton. So back to the reason that I'm here, I mentioned in the beginning that Rabbi Davidovich, the rabbi for the Heights Jewish Center, could not be here today. And as we know, the Heights Jewish Center is a nice Orthodox Jewish, facility, and that was her synagogue. That's where she maintained her membership. So there was something in her that she always felt that, I wanted to support the synagogue. I wanted to have a connection to a Jewish place like that and to keep it strong. And so today she'll be honored, in the synagogue's context, and also she will be buried in the Heights Jewish Center section in the Sinai cemetery next to her beloved Mori. So she was indeed a proud Jewish person, just who wasn't overly observant, but she always knew who she was as an important Jewish person. So as we close, I just want to mention that nothing is a coincidence. And sometimes the day that it comes out, when a person leaves this world, when a person is buried, tells a lot of the story of their life. And as we know, we came from the holiday of Passover. And the theme of the Passover holiday is certainly the theme of freedom, and that the concept of redemption, that out of something that's so mucky and messy and so unclear how it could ever work out, that the Jewish people arose and became a nation. So it's very much a season of hope and freedom. And in particular, this whole Jewish month of Nisan, is looked at a month of pure happiness. And in fact, during the Jewish prayer service, there's something called the Kel Mali Rachamim prayer. There's a little bit of a sad or memorial prayer that we typically say at Jewish funerals. But the Jewish law is actually that you're not allowed to say it. Because this whole month is a month of happiness, we're not allowed to mention that memorial prayer. So I don't think it's a coincidence that a person who was very much about happiness, that's how she dealt with suffering and struggle, was just put it all aside. Just smile, just happy. Sing, dance, don't worry about your troubles. So it's not an accident that the month that we are burying her and taking care of her like we are is a month where the trees are in beautiful bloom. It's such a beautiful day outside, which is really her message to us saying, don't cry too much. Just be happy for me instead. So we all pray for her, that her memory should be for a blessing, and her gumption, her chutzpah, her love for life, her spice in life should always be with us and keep us from being too sad. We should be like her and think how she would smile and be happy, even when she wasn't feeling too good. So the surprise that I had for you, comes via Marilyn, and that she was at her party, this party for her 100th birthday, like I mentioned, about a year ago. And she took this most amazing video. Oh, sorry, Eileen. I'm sorry, Eileen. So Eileen took this most amazing video where you really caught her essence, in this party and how happy she is. And you won't be able to see it. It's kind of a small screen, but the sound is amazing. And what she's doing is she's actually singing a song, which is called "It's a Sin to Tell a Lie." Maybe some people in the audience are very familiar with this song. I guess it's kind of a classic. But it says, "It's a sin to tell a lie when I say I love you." So listen very carefully to the music. When he says, "I love you," we'll see if she believes. So obviously, if you can't see it, you'll ask Eileen. Maybe she'll send you a copy. But here we go. It's a sin to tell a lie. Millions of hearts have been broken. Millions of hearts have been broken. Just because these words were spoken. I love you. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Really? I love you. If you break my heart, I'll cry. So be sure it's true when you say, so be sure it's true when you say I love you. It's a sin to tell. Yeah, be sure it's true when you say I love you.
love you.
Yeah, I know you don't.
Yes, I do.
I said
just
you don't.
too
I
terrible.
saw you with a couple of dames out there.
Yeah, I do. I love you.
I'm one of them.
Many has been broken. These because.
Okay, so I'll hold it here. I'll just show quickly this picture. So I'm sure we all enjoyed that video very much. And so today, following today's service, we're going to move on to the Mount Sinai Cemetery for the interment. Mount Sinai Cemetery is located on Sam Center Road at the intersection of Sam and White Road. And then also following the interment, the family will be receiving friends at the Cedar Center Apartments, the ones next to Target, 14050 Cedar Road. And that's going to be today, following the interment, until 5 p.m. And I just want to read something quickly from her obituary. It says, Sylvia enjoyed life, laughing, singing, and dancing in her wheelchair, even on her 100th birthday. She said you needed to accept life as it comes and sing when you are upset. Sylvia was blessed to receive the care, compassion, and friendship of Ms. Smith during the last 8 years of her life. She also received wonderful care from the kindred staff at the Fountains and Stratford Commons. Instead of flowers or contributions, please treat yourself and go out for lunch. Have fun, laugh, and remember Sylvia. Sylvia would like that. I ask everyone to please rise. We're going to be reciting the Mourner's Kaddish. And then after that, we're going to have the pallbearers come forward. And we're going to have the casket go out first, led by the pallbearers. The family will come behind the casket, and then the folks in the audience will follow in after that. So take a minute to get yourself ready. We'll start in a moment with the Kaddish. That's when we have enough people. We'll all say it together.
to be a pallbearer, I don't know if you can. If you're going to the cemetery, we could use you.
Yeah, old, male, female.
Anyone? Right.
Those, all
Yeah,
the
that-
details.
it's-
Okay, let them follow right behind. You're gonna follow right behind, let them follow right behind the casket. We just have you follow right along.
We're gonna push it out, maybe to 5.